In the late 19th century, a German philosopher named Friedrich Nietzsche looked out at the world and, with a kind of prophetic clarity, saw chaos. He wasn't staring at the kind of chaos we see in Hollywood films or political crises on the evening news. No, what Nietzsche saw was deeper, a moral and existential disarray that threatened human society. His declaration that God is dead wasn't just a statement about religion. It was a prediction about what would happen when humanity lost its moral compass, its sense of higher purpose. We're still living with the consequences today. What does it mean when someone says God is dead? Nietzsche didn't mean that a literal God had perished. Instead, he was pointing out that the traditional values that once held society together, the beliefs, the rituals, the stories that gave life meaning, were crumbling. People were becoming more skeptical, more secular, and in doing so they were losing something essential, a shared sense of purpose. The world, Nietzsche feared, was slipping into a moral vacuum where anything could happen, where meaning itself was at risk. If you look around today, doesn't it feel like Nietzsche was right in some sense? We live in an age where the old systems of belief, whether religious, political, or social, are constantly questioned. We're bombarded with more information than ever before, yet people feel more disconnected, more isolated. Everyone has a voice, but few seem to feel heard. We have endless choices, but little guidance. The result? Anxiety, confusion, and sometimes even despair. Nietzsche foresaw this, and it's not hard to see why. He understood that human beings are meaning-seeking creatures. We don't just live, we want to know why we live. For millennia, religions provided that answer. They told us where we came from, what we were meant to do, and what happened after we died. Whether or not you believe in those answers today is beside the point. The fact is, they provided structure, something to hold on to when life felt overwhelming or uncertain. But with the Enlightenment, with the rise of science and reason, many people began to reject these narratives. And what were they left with? Nothing. He called this nihilism, the belief that life has no inherent meaning or value. For Nietzsche, this was both a danger and an opportunity. On one hand, nihilism could lead to despair, to people feeling that nothing mattered. On the other hand, it could be a chance for humanity to create new values, to redefine what matters on their own terms. Here's where things get interesting. In the absence of a universal moral code, we didn't all come together and create new, shared values, did we? Instead, the world splintered. Everyone is searching for their own version of meaning. Some turn to social causes, others to personal success, still others to spirituality. But there's no longer a single thread tying us together, no central story we're all a part of. We live in a kind of moral free-for-all, and it's exhausting. How did we get here? How did we go from a world where shared values and beliefs guided whole societies to one where every individual is left to figure it out for themselves? It's easy to point fingers at science, technology, or even capitalism, but the truth is more complicated. Part of it comes down to the fact that we as a species are constantly evolving, not just physically, but intellectually and morally. What worked for humans living in small, tight-knit communities thousands of years ago doesn't necessarily work for massive, globalized societies today. Think about the social revolutions of the 20th century. Civil rights movements, women's liberation, LGBTQ+ rights. These were all essential, necessary evolutions in our moral thinking. They challenged the status quo, asked difficult questions, and demanded new answers. But every time we break an old norm, we also create uncertainty. We say, that's not the way things should be. But we don't always know what the new way should look like. We dismantle, but we don't always rebuild. Nietzsche's idea of the Übermensch or Overman comes into play here. He envisioned a future where humans, instead of succumbing to nihilism, would rise above it by creating their own values, living authentically according to their own truths. The Übermensch wasn't bound by traditional morality, but forged a path forward based on strength, creativity, and willpower. This wasn't about selfishness or hedonism. It was about living with purpose and conviction in a world without predetermined meaning. The question is, have we achieved this? Are we living as Übermenschen, or have we fallen into the trap of nihilism that Nietzsche warned us about? On the surface, we might think that modern society, with its emphasis on personal freedom and individualism, is exactly what Nietzsche had in mind. After all, we've never had more autonomy over our lives. We can choose our careers, our partners, even our identities in ways that would have been unimaginable just a few generations ago. But with all this freedom comes a deep responsibility, one that many people feel unprepared for. But freedom, without a clear sense of purpose, can feel paralyzing. It's like standing in front of an endless buffet and not knowing what to choose. Too many options can lead to indecision, or worse, to a feeling of meaninglessness. We can see this in the rise of mental health issues, the growing number of people who feel disconnected from their communities, from themselves. It's almost as if we've been given all the tools we need to create fulfilling lives, but we've forgotten how to use them. So what do we do? How do we navigate this chaotic, fragmented world without losing ourselves in the process? Nietzsche's answer wasn't to turn back the clock or to return to the old ways of thinking. Instead, he urged us to confront the chaos head-on. He believed that by embracing the uncertainty of life, by accepting that there is no inherent meaning, we could actually find freedom. It's a terrifying thought at first, life without a clear purpose, but it's also incredibly liberating. When you stop searching for some external meaning and start creating your own, life becomes a canvas of endless possibilities. So how do we create meaning in a world that offers none? Nietzsche would argue that it starts with self-awareness. To live authentically, we must first understand who we are, what we value, and what we want out of life. It's about stripping away the layers of societal expectations, family pressures, and external validation, and getting to the core of what truly matters to us. This is no easy task. It requires introspection, honesty, and sometimes painful self-reflection. Nietzsche wasn't offering a simple solution to the messiness of life. In fact, his philosophy is notoriously difficult, not just because of its complexity, but because of the demands it places on the individual. He asks us to take full responsibility for our lives, to stop looking for easy answers, and to start crafting our own path forward. It's a call to radical personal accountability, something that many people might find daunting, especially in a world that seems more chaotic by the day. But maybe there's a silver lining in all this. If Nietzsche was right, then the chaos we see today isn't just a problem. It's an opportunity. It's a chance for each of us to step up, to take control of our own destinies, and to build a life of meaning, even when the world around us seems meaningless. It's not about rejecting society or turning inward. It's about recognizing that in a world without universal truths, the power to create meaning rests within each of us. In the end, Nietzsche wasn't a pessimist, despite how his philosophy is often portrayed. He didn't see the death of traditional values as a catastrophe, but as a necessary step in human evolution. We're still in the middle of that evolution, still trying to figure out what comes next. But one thing is clear: the world may be a mess, but it's our mess. And within that mess lies the potential for something greater, something more human, more authentic, and more meaningful, if we're willing to create it.